Talking that soaking out of her neck, but blood on her dress. Be mad when they see Cardi step in the spot. Said that you bought it, we know that you're not. I'ma pull up.
Hi, my name is Darnell Adams, and I'll be the host for today's news show. Today, we're going to be exploring ownership now. And that can be broken down in a lot of different ways. We're going to both have editorial, and we'll have some interviews exploring the ways in which co-ops right now are dealing with organizing and gaining membership and ownership in the middle of unprecedented times. We have economic uncertainty. We have concerns and worries about the pandemic, the health of ourselves, our families, and our communities. We have political uprisings. And in all of that, we're all trying to organize in the face of this. And that could either be seen as both a challenge and as an opportunity. So let's kind of explore a few things along those lines and see what we can find and learn together. One thing that I've been thinking about throughout the last year is democracy and what that means and how it can play out. And we're seeing what it looks like in the political arena every day. And for many, that is a cause of disappointment, if not distress. But I also been thinking about it, what it looks like in terms of organizing for cooperatives. What does it mean for running a cooperative grocery store, which is based on democratic principles? It's one member and one vote. And what does that look like? Not just for an open store, but for when you're organizing. According to the Food Co-op Initiative, it is taking, at this point, more members, more owners to open a grocery store than ever before. They do not see that statistic changing. So if you were in the past maybe organizing to a certain number that you were thinking that you would need to have in order to support a store, what they're seeing is those numbers are actually trending higher. And I think about the kind of the ricketiness of democracy, right? And how fragile it can be. And in organizing, groups have kind of come together in different ways. Sometimes it's a group of folks who just come together, like-minded individuals who might be talking about their specific needs and find that the solution is in building a cooperative grocery store. Sometimes the process is very different. Sometimes the process is a group of people come together, decide that there's actually lots of things that they'd like to address in their communities, bring a larger group together, and they, through a process of visioning, decide that a cooperative grocery store is the answer to addressing many of the issues that they might be finding there in their community. So it can come from either direction, right? Kind of the one small nucleus of people who go out, or coming from a larger group that is deciding that this is the way they want to proceed in their community. All of which is still valid and a democratic way to kind of go about it, as long as indeed there is a way that the vision is being shaped by a large group and most address the needs of a community at large. I think that what we have seen kind of in consulting and in developing co-ops is that either way is fine, either way is valid, and either way can get you to your destination. But the types of activities that ultimately lead to the process of gaining membership and ownership quicker is a really strong vision. One would say, well, how can that be possible that if you have an organization, you're having conversations and everyone has their different take on what might be the best way forward, how does that then build a cohesive way forward? And in the end, I think the process of deeply understanding community and having a broad base of support, there's lots of ways in which people can kind of actually plug in to your particular movement and vision. So we have breaking news right here from, all right, we have actually Jacqueline Hanna from the Food Cop Initiative, who is gonna speak a little bit to this point. All right, here we go, we're breaking away.
If it's useful, the co-ops that have done the best through this phase with ownership growth, specifically though, have really seen themselves as solving a problem. They're like, so they're actually, I think a lot of co-ops have been like, we're afraid to ask for money right now. And then there's co-ops have been like, now more than ever, we can help with this problem. And that split in attitude specifically shows you who's successful and who's not. Is, do you actually believe as a board that you're here to create change that was needed before COVID and now is needed even more? If so, you're doing well. If not, if part of you is like, this is kind of deep down your heart, like a side project, we're afraid to put it out there instead of seeing like people need this more than ever, this hope, this sense of agency, this sense of doing something. If you don't see it as hope and agency and doing something, your co-op's ownership growth isn't doing well. And it's just like that.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline Hanna, for your insight. Really appreciate that. So going back to some thoughts about questions really about democracy. What happens when individuals are not actually knowledgeable about the system, not able to participate in the ways in meaningful ways? You know, in my mind, it actually does kind of erode the basis of a democracy. And I've been kind of thinking about that in terms of the country, the way it is right now, but also what happens when you have really, you're organizing in the end, maybe thousands of people to get together to open a grocery store. How are the ways that people are participating, understanding what the co-op is trying to do, being informed of the big decisions that might affect them, and can meaningfully participate in the opening of the grocery store. This also does tie back to vision, because what can happen over time certainly is that the vision can change due to different circumstances. As you're getting more and more voices into the conversation, the vision can kind of shift a little bit sometimes. And are you prepared and are you willing? Do you have a framework in which that vision can actually shift and change in such a way that it actually is a much bigger umbrella that can fit the needs of the majority of the people in your community? I would also say this, that it might be possible that that's not your interest at all. If your interest is really narrow, if there's a niche that you're trying to fill, perhaps it's really you're interested in organic foods, and there's a lack of that in your community, and you do realize that the price point might be something that is out of reach for many in your community, but there's still a market to support it. And if that is the vision of the group that you've put together, then so be it. But to be honest and open about the vision, and knowing that it is only trying to accommodate a smaller part of your community, is important to just be honest about that, right? If you are having a price point that shuts a lot of folks out, doesn't make it as accessible, but you're saying that you're organizing for everyone and to have an accessible grocery store, then that mismatch is going to affect membership. is you're ultimately speaking to everyone as if it's a approach that is going to address everyone's needs, but it's pretty clear that that's not the case. So whether you're building something real niche or you're deciding that it's going to be something bigger, maybe part of a movement, that you're looking at economic disparity, maybe you're looking at racial disparity, maybe you're looking at food access or whatever it might be, that as you are thinking of yourself in place of inside of a larger movement, being able to clearly articulate those things will be the way in which people understand and know that it's more than just a grocery store that you're trying to build, and that there's multiple ways in which they can plug in. There's all sorts of ways in which they're saying, my main interest might be, say, disparity in housing. But one piece of that is for the people who, for the community to be whole, for it to be healthy, that there also needs to be amenities here for everyone. And so while my particular thing is housing, I can see how the co-op actually supports the larger vision for the community. So that would be one way to kind of start thinking through some of messaging, but also the folks that you will be kind of bringing in, perhaps in coalition, right? So it doesn't have to be that is some kind of binding partnership that you have, but there are like-minded people in community that are working towards a specific goal, maybe in their own particular way in their sector, but they're ones who can build synergy and alignment that can make kind of the wheels of messaging be much more powerful and be much more holistic. And in that, when you're seeing that kind of like messaging being effective, clarity in voice, clarity in your goal, there is absolutely no doubt that ownership will grow. Sometimes approaching ownership just for raw numbers may not actually get you to where you wish to be. We're thinking about a vibrant, exciting, and fluid democracy, and in this case, democratic business. We're looking in ways in which people are plugging in all kind of different ways, that there are feedback loops that you're hearing from people, and that you're able to actually, even if you're all coming at different angles, generally move in a particular direction. And that in doing so, that excitement, that ability to catch one person on fire and have them go out and just tell the world like, hey, yo, this thing, I thought it was just a grocery store, but actually what they're looking at is this whole community and all the ways in which like it could improve. There's a way in which not only do you have membership that is growing, but you have people who are participating in meaningful ways that gives value to the organizing today, before there's a store, right? Before there is anything, there is actually value in becoming a member, and there's value in dreaming together, and there's value in doing the super hard work to get the store off the ground. In thinking a lot about organizing for startup food co-ops, obviously it's complicated. You have both business planning and you have community organizing. I think though that, kind of merging both, knowing that those two things are going on at the same time, but often that the principles of community organizing are the things that are ultimately going to get you members, get people to understand what you're trying to do, or actually, I would say that's not even quite it. In some ways, it's that you're understanding what they want, and you are have something to deliver to them that is clear what the value is, right? So I think community organizing is one of those things that unless you are a trained community organizer, it seems like, all right, well, there's some principles, you go out maybe and you knock on some doors. But it's more than that. It's actually an incredible skill, and takes a lot of training. But there's some things that for us that are not trained in community organizing can take some of those principles, and then apply it to our particular organizing efforts. I think we all are capable of doing that, but we do have people who are going to be able to share some of their thoughts about that. But we have experts from across the country who are going to join us and talk about their takes on what it means right now, ownership right now, what they're seeing from the ground floor. So let's cut away for a minute for a commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
They know how I'm coming, we're coming the flesh. Who the she gon' check? She be talking that shit, talking out of her neck. But blood on her dress. Be mad when they see Cardi step in the spot. Said that you bought it, we know that you not. I'ma pull up on pull-ups as soon as I drop. Bought a new foreign, I might could be ya. Bitch, in my business, they tryna plot. Poppin' shit like they hot, but they not. Just blur at the wrist, the paddock, the watch. We flexin', we know what you got. Cardi the hack at the game in the...
So back to the news. Right now we have in the studio Kenya Baker from United Power, who's going to tell us a bit of what she's been working on and what the community's been working on, and her vision, her understanding of ownership now. Take it away.
Hey Darnell, how you doing today?
Hey.
Good. I'm so glad that you called me today to talk about the importance of ownership and cooperation and gathering, because that's what it's all about. Gem City Market, as you all know, is my flagship project here in Dayton, and we have 3,500 members for a reason, because we focus on gathering, whether it's phone rallying, gardening. You might see a little dirt under my nails today, Darnell. I've been out germinating seeds for the DeSoto Bass Garden, because we garden in a low-income housing project. That's been our main reason for organizing, because systemically and historically, this area has been divested from and deprived of a lot of wherewithal and sustainability. So what cooperatives and ownership is doing for the West Dayton area is restoring and regenerating a sense of hope, a sense of joy, a sense of, most importantly, collectivism. So that collectivism is being derived from ownership. We're giving people the opportunity to own a piece of where they're getting their healthy food access, healthy food being emphasized. You know, our structure is going to be like 70-30, organic, natural, local grown. That's important too. When people see that they can grow their own vegetables and actually procure them in the same place, giving them an opportunity to really understand ownership and self-sustainability. How can they take their own future into their own hands? I believe in the Kwanzaa celebration, we call it Kujichagulia, self-determination. People are self-determining what their future looks like. And COVID has been so crazy, has it not?
It has.
We've been going through this pandemic for a year, coming up on a year now. Here we are, in April, talking about the impacts of COVID and how people really have not been able to get together and really culminate this tomorrow. But this is the time, reimagining, reshaping, as stores across the country are reopening, talking about what does that future look like, a shared future from a divided past, I believe is the way Amaha puts it. That's what we're focusing on. And we're doing that together in very innovative ways. I mean, we've done everything from cornhole to library informational sessions to going out and, as I said, gardening and low-income projects, trivia night, making it fun, making it also an opportunity for people to engage, to not just sit and listen, not just to be a non-participatory member, but to be a participatory member and to actually take part in what their future and what their current resources looks like. That comes through ownership, Darnell.
That is incredibly informative, and while we have you in our studio, we would love to ask you also maybe advice for the listeners out there about how they can both best shape their strategy in terms of understanding what their community needs, how they're listening, and also how it's shaping their overall vision for their organizing.
Talk to your people. Things that are done in the boardroom are for the boardroom. It should be based off of what the greater population is saying. You do that in various ways. Right now, we're gearing up. We've teamed up with State Voices. We have a branch here in Ohio called Ohio Voices, where they share their van list with us, which is a list of all the residents, all their addresses, all their phone numbers, all their demographic information. Gives us an opportunity to hold phone rallies where we call people and we say, we call it a felt needs campaign. Hey, got a cooperative grocery store. We've got a community land trust. What is it that you need from us? It's called a felt needs campaign. Really finding out and tapping into what the greater community needs, not just a few people in the boardroom. I say it again. It's critical, especially with the state of the current status as far as coronavirus and the pandemic, all of the systemic ills of this country. We have to get the voice of the people, because that is going to be the largest voice in the room regardless. And it'll either be roaring with us or roaring at us. And if we wanted to roar with us, we have to make sure that we can hear it clearly. And then we create this communal voice, this one voice where we're all speaking the same language. It's about what we need. And generally, those needs line up if you talk to enough people. So our goal is to talk to about 500 people during this next set of phone rallies. We'll be calling people every Wednesday. We call it Phone Rally Working Wednesday. And for that 3-hour segment, we go by Zoom. We call those lists of people and we just listen to the people. What's going on right now? What type of resources would you like for us to hook you up with? And at the same time, educating them and informing them about our cooperative actions in the community. So it's an opportunity for us to engage, not only about what we're doing, what we decided in the boardroom, but what they would like to see us doing when we're in that boardroom.
That sounds amazing and very innovative. How many people actually participate in this phone rally to reach out to 500 people?
Generally, we like about 10 people, 10 to 15.
And people pick up.
They pick up the phone. You normally get it's a split response. It could vary, but generally, statistically, they say that you'll get about 10 to 20% of a response when you reach out. It's a challenge. It's not easy. It's just like canvassing, but we focus on deep listening. And deep listening means I'm not coming to you with just a set of questions, but I'm coming to you with more open-ended questions, giving you an opportunity to really explain and talk about what it is that you care about, your agenda, and not just about us calling. Normally you get a call, people want something. But how often do you get a call where people want to know what you want?
Never.
So it's random and it works. And some people are lonely, so this is really the good time to be calling people and just saying, hey, somebody's thinking about you. What are you thinking about? And it's not weird because we've got this beautiful 15,000 square foot building sitting on the corner of Salem and Superior over here in Dayton, Ohio. Brand new building, sparklingly new shelves and equipment, and everyone's excited about that already. So when we lead in with that, we pretty much have the ears of our community at this point. And it's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure.
Can you speak to the folks who are a little bit down the road from actually having the building built, and any words of advice for folks who keep saying, well, there's no store yet, so that means that I can't do the things that others are doing? Any words of advice?
Darnell, listen, we've got 3,500 members and we haven't sold one box of cornflakes. The reason why we have 3,500 members is because we've engaged people and co-constructed this grocery store from the beginning. Like, what do you think about this mission? What type of vision do you see for this grocery store? So people have been so actively engaged in participating in this process leading up to the erection of this edifice that it's really like the most critical part of the journey. Like I like the way one teacher told me, you know, I was a teacher for 17 years. She told me it's not really about the product, it's about the process. When people can enjoy, because see, the process takes longer than the product. Once the product's there, the product's there. The grocery store is built, that's done. Now you're gonna have shopping and marketing, and that's a whole nother animal. But leading up to it has been really the work, and people participated in the work with it. So I hope I answered your question because I'm excited over here in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, you should be. So I want to congratulate all the hard work from you, your team, the entire community in visioning and imagining and manifesting the store that's soon to be open. We wish you the best of success.
Thank you.
Any last words to our viewer audience? Just one last thing in your parting as we close out this interview.
Yes.
What would you like to share?
I can't say it enough. As the outreach director for Gem City Market over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, one thing that I think has been more important than anything else is that one person is really 20 people. People talk, they move in circles, they move in ciphers, they have synergy, they have individuals that they influence. They call them spheres of influence. 1 for 20. So when you have 2 people show up at a meeting, you really have 40 people at your meeting. And if you always operate with that mentality, then you're always germinating and spreading and sowing the seeds of tomorrow. What you want to do is have a strong, serious, long-lasting, sustainable impact. And you do that by understanding your destiny is not what you see with your eyes. Things might be slow. They may seem like they're not going to grow, but if you continue to believe and speak those things that are not as though they are, they will manifest.
Thank you so much for your expertise and your generosity and sharing with the rest of the co-op community, all the success that you're having.
Thank you.
And we're lucky, folks. This is an exclusive interview only you can find here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, up and coming 2021. I appreciate you. And thank you, Darnell. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Woo, Kenya Baker, that was fire. Thank you so much. We now have Bonnie Hudspeth of the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, who is in the studio to talk to us about what's happening right now in the Northeast.
Thank you, Darnell. It's such a treat to be here. So yeah, I work with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, and we are 40 food co-ops and startups working together toward this vision of a healthy, just food system and a thriving cooperative economy. And so part of our role is kind of bringing together both startups and established food co-ops for shared learning and innovation and growth. And so I have the benefit of being able to kind of see on the ground what's happening in communities across the Northeast and see strategies for building membership and strategies for community organizing within startups. So yeah, I think what's interesting is Darnell said, hey, what are you noticing, right? With what's going on with membership development and organizing co-ops. And I think one of the main things that we're really wanting to touch on is noticing how important community organizing framework is for building a co-op.
Well, what do you mean by that? What is community organizing framework?
Yeah, so I think sometimes we don't think of ourselves that way, but we are and we should be community organizers when we're building food co-ops, because we are not building a grocery store. We're not building just a grocery store, right? It's more than a grocery store. We're building a movement in our communities. Our co-ops are movements, aren't they? So
I think so.
Yeah, right. So we're building a movement based on shared values in our communities, and it involves the whole communities. If just a small group of people are doing it, it ain't going anywhere, right? It's gonna fall flat at some point. And I think if we look at building membership as like, here's our total numbers we have to get to, and let's painstakingly add one member owner at a time to get to the 1,000 member owners or whatever it is. That it's not gonna be fun, first off, which is really not okay. And it's going to stop us from approaching the community or approaching organizing a co-op totally differently. And so I just want to give a shout out to Ed Whitfield, who works at Fund for Democratic Communities, who frames kind of 3 different ways of co-op development, which is capitalist model. How can we maximize surplus, right? We can return it. It's still cooperative, but the whole goal of the co-op is returning as much patronage to the member owners, which is sort of capitalist, right? And then there's the charity model, which is how can we do something for these poor people? We're doing something for them. And that does not work. Ooh. And then there's the mutual aid model, which is tied into community organizing, which is totally rooted in solidarity and the idea that an understanding, it really is an understanding because it's the truth. We're all in this together. We all need good food. We've identified a shared unmet need in our community, and the cooperative is a collective solution, right? And so that mutual aid model and framework needs to be rooted in community organizing. If you're building something together and you're recognizing, what if we're focusing on what strengths does Darnell bring to the table? Not weaknesses does she bring. What are her strengths? What are my strengths? What are our collective strengths? And how do we build on our gifts collectively to get the thing that we need? And that's basically community organizing, and it's asset-based community development. So I think, when we started noticing this and saying, hey, a lot of the co-ops that are doing successful organizing are using community organizing tools, it allowed us to kind of step back and partner. Jacqueline Hanna from Food Co-op Initiative and I partnered up and said, we got to put some of this stuff in writing and kind of have a checklist so we can help the startups that are in our region to think about, okay, well, what are the aspects? How can we break down some of these aspects of community organizing and reflect on, are we actually using them? Are we doing what we can to organize a movement that's more than just adding on a bunch of members to build a grocery store?
So you actually had thought about this, worked with Jacqueline Hanna as well. Is there a tool or something that folks who are interested in learning more about actually organizing through community organizing principles, is there something that they can be pointed to?
Yes. And we had started working on it. It's called a community organizing self-assessment. And we'll make sure that it's live and findable on FCI's website, Food Co-op Initiative's website. But we worked with another organizer from our region, a startup organizer, Kinga, with the Common Share Food Co-op. And she was using the community organizing framework as a board member in her co-op. And she added in a couple questions to help make this tool even more powerful. So shout out to Kinga.
Yeah, Kinga.
And so, some of the questions it asks that allows you to reflect as a group is like, is your vision rooted in community? If it's a small group of you that were sitting around a table drinking wine and saying we should do a co-op, that's great, but did you actually do the things to build this up and get community input, right? If you didn't, you're not going to build up member owners. And is your leadership rooted in the community? And kind of questions about who's building this co-op, because it's not just you. And then questions about organizational power, has your co-op built up community power? So it's kind of breaking down some of the pieces of community organizing and asking questions for you all to reflect on and be like, hey, are we actually using community organizing in the way that we're organizing the co-op? Because when you do that, you don't have to be so hyper-focused on how many members you're getting, in that day, because the reality is if you do the things, if you organize as a mutual aid model and you're building a movement, the members will come because the members are going to be building it with you, right? It's not going to be an overtaxed small group of a super dedicated board with a community that's separate and distant. It's going to be, Amaha Selassie from Gem City Market says radical hospitality, right? There's going to be radical hospitality where people are coming to the table and y'all are building a community space so vibrant and compelling that people are coming to the table and being drawn to it together. And if you do that, the membership will take care of itself.
Well, this is amazing. And one thing before I know that you have a busy schedule and another interview to do right after this, but could you kind of give some general advice for people who are organizing right now across the country that are concerned that perhaps in the middle of a pandemic and political uprisings and things like that, that maybe their message is like how it actually plays out in this time? How do they organize in this particular time in history?
I mean, I think this time in history calls for mutual aid, right? We've seen that in response to the pandemic. We've seen that in response to how communities are looking to build power in themselves versus rely on an outside hero, right? Or an outside salvation to solve the problems in our communities. And I think building up our tools as community organizers is what has allowed communities to be more resilient in this time. Included in and aside from organizing co-ops, it's investing in ourselves as leaders, trusting ourselves, right? Trusting ourselves that we have the tools within our own communities, and that when we work together and we break down, we stop dehumanizing each other and we rehumanize or build back our human connections and look at the leadership skills around the table, not at leadership deficiencies, and build upon them. That is exactly what we need to address the racism in our system. That's exactly what we need to address the structural inequities. When we build up power and take back power into our own hands and build it collectively through mutual aid, through community organizing, I think that's what's more powerful than taking action together through that way.
Bonnie, can you tell me more about your thoughts about the relationship between community organizing and cooperatives?
Yeah, so when we really think about why are our communities organizing co-ops, it's looking at the capitalist system and the failures of the capitalist system, right? There are unmet needs in our community that we come together through a cooperative structure to meet collectively. And when you think about what the definition of community organizing is, it's very similar. It's the process of building power and looking at the problems in our communities and then collectively identifying solutions to the problems in our communities. So it's very related, right? And I think that's where, when we look at, okay, well then when that comes to how does that relate to building membership? Well, has your co-op built up community power? If you ask yourself that question, have you built up strategic alliances with community leaders from a variety of organizations? Have you built up co-op champions inside your community, outside of just your core leadership team, right? Those asking yourself those types of questions is going to build up much more than your membership base. It's going to build up a strong base of people building power, even if you never open the doors in your store. You have transformed your community for the better. And that's how community organizing really weaves into organizing a food co-op.
Thank you so much for your the time that you took to sit through this interview. We're really lucky to get this scoop, and we're the first ones to be able to show it on air. So we appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bonnie. So we're going to move on to the forecast before we break away for other programming. And one thing that I want to say about the forecast is this. It is sunny and bright. There is so much going on in the food co-ops right now in terms of organizing that I think the sky's the limit, right? I think that we're in unprecedented times, and all the ways that you can bring your creativity and your passion and your willingness to learn from each other, the more that we're going to see food co-ops opening in all kind of places that they haven't been before. So you're doing great work. I'm excited about all your projects and what you'll be doing. And for today, The forecast is lots and lots of information. It is coming. You have things from membership engagement, messaging, specifically how to organize and think about membership growth. You have Suncoast, who's been cooking their way into greater membership involvement and also increasing membership. So it's a sunny forecast for food co-ops and a sunny forecast for today. I hope you all have a fantastic day and that we will be seeing you again soon for another programming of Food Co-op News. Take care.
Big bitches be pressed. They know how I'm coming, we're coming the flesh. With a she gon' check. She be talking that shit talking out of her neck. But blood on her dress. Be mad when they see Cardi step in the spot. Said that you bought it, we know that you not.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Just spread at the wrist, the paddock, the watch. We flexin', we know what you got. Cardi the hack at the game in the knot. Look at your I got him on light, just go bang, bang like I'm chopping them chops.